Thank you so much for coming out this evening. I'm Cynthia Wigren with Atlantic White Shark Conservancy. We are a Cape-based nonprofit that was started to fund research for white sharks and promote shark education. So we've teamed up with Mass Audubon and Cape Cod Museum of Natural History for our education piece. And that's why we're co-sponsoring this with the museum today. We have a scholarship program that we started, and we're sending 5 kids to summer camp at both of those organizations this summer. They have week-long camps, and they've incorporated a shark component into their camp so that kids can learn about sharks and the outdoors and go through the camp process and just have a fun learning experience. So the other piece that we have is the research component. We work directly with Greg Skomal to outline what his goals are for research and work to fund those goals. We have purchased 10 acoustic tags this year. We've purchased a computer to download receiver data, and we have also paid for 1 tagging trip so far. We are all here this evening because we are welcoming OSearch and the team of OSearch. They are here for a month, so they're 3 days into their month-long expedition, and we are teaming up with them to raise awareness and to connect you all to the research taking place. So we really appreciate you being here, and I will introduce Chris Fisher. He's the head of OSearch, and he'll introduce you to the rest of the team.
Thank you, Cynthia. I feel like I have such a big voice now. It's great to be here. It's amazing to be welcomed by a community the way we have. This really is all for you and for your kids and for the future of the ocean. So it's a thrill to begin to integrate the community with the work on the water. It used to be so often we were just out there floating around and we didn't really connect, and we've really made a big effort to change that. It's also really great to be speaking. I do a lot of public speaking, but not often with the guys here from the ship. So it's great. I want to introduce the full-time crew of the ship. We have most of them. We have Captain Brett McBride there, our fishing master. He's been on the water with me since the beginning in the mid to late 90s. We have Whitey Evans there next to Captain Brett McBride. Whitey tags all of the white sharks, along with Brandon Iyer. Brandon's in the back there. He helps the filmmakers as well as he and Whitey tag the white sharks. So one of the things that's been interesting in this journey, when we tagged our first white sharks, it took them about 14 minutes. Now they do it in less than 3, which allows us to accomplish more for other scientists so we can learn more in the same window of time. We have our first mate there, Todd Goggins, who's Captain Brett's right-hand man, and Captain our chief engineer, Nick Alhaj. Our mate, Alex, who's in the Contender with us, capturing the white sharks, as well as a mate on the ship and managing the boats and operating there. And then we're also thrilled to have several, what this is all about. This is about bringing world-class mariners and fishermen together with world-class scientists to create never-had-before world-class data. And we're thrilled to have our chief scientist on this project from the state of Massachusetts, Dr. Greg Skomal. And then, of course, Heather Marshall. All right, so I don't really know how much you all know about us at OSearch and myself, so the best way, I'm going to kind of take you from where this started into how we got here, and then we'll talk about the here and now, because I can't assume that anyone knows really where we come from or what we're up to. So OSearch, many years ago, I was spending time on the water. I was where's the thing at? I'm a Kentucky boy. I was born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky, and I ran around in all the creeks and rivers of Kentucky chasing frogs around and small and largemouth bass. But I think the main thing was, I was really plugged in to the outdoors, really felt connected to that, and that was because my parents really made it very easy to get into the outdoors by making it really accessible. I had amazing parents. One day, they picked me up from 4th grade and we went camping, and we drove from Louisville, Kentucky to Alaska and got back the day before 5th grade. I think it changed my life. And so there was this connection to the outdoors and always being in the outdoors, I think, that really led to what we're doing here now. And a lot of the, I have a little problem with my clicker here. Man. A lot of the things that helped us get through this journey happened at the dinner table with my mom and dad. That was my first real exposure to leadership and vision. And my dad used to talk about the biggest room in the world. Do any of you kids know what the biggest room in the world is? The biggest room in the world? All the giant buildings we have? It's the room for improvement. No matter how big or how good you get at anything, there's always room to improve. So when we started heading out on this journey, I think the room for improvement is really where it all began. So when I was a kid, my brothers and I started a business. We sold it, and I had a little time off, so I went fishing. But one thing had really changed when I went fishing. This was in the late 90s. It was our daughter, Sarah. It completely changed my relationship with the ocean and fishing. And I began immediately to think about, what's it going to be like for them? I had sold a business. I had no idea what I was going to do with the balance of my life. And so we went fishing. And this impact of having my daughter there changed everything for me. It felt no longer like I was fishing for myself. What about fishing for her, fishing for the future? And we'd come back from these amazing trips, and we'd go to the beaches of California, and we'd say, wow, we saw these amazing things, and some were scary, some were wonderful, and people would be like, okay, whatever, let's go eat dinner. I said, wow, if you're disconnected in California and you live on the ocean, what about the people in Kentucky where I'm from? So from that moment forward, I decided to pour the world's oceans into people's homes through whatever device that they wanted to consume content. Back in the day, a couple generations ago, someone poured the world's oceans into our homes and connected us all through our television sets, but it had been lost for 2 generations, and no one was giving the ocean a centrist, data-driven, global voice. So I said, I'm just going to pour the world's oceans into people's homes so they care, they're aware, and they know what's going on. So we started Offshore Adventures. It was on ESPN for a number of years. It was like the most watched outdoor TV show of its time, but I quickly began to learn in the midst of it that, we needed the knowledge of the practical world-class captains with the knowledge of world-class academics. We needed those 2 worlds to come together so we could get data we never had before, so we could affect policy on things we didn't understand. So we started helping scientists. This is a sailfish, and the point of this slide is the tag. We were helping a scientist understand these sailfish out in the Pacific so we could solve the puzzle of their lives, and he also happened to be a white shark guy. And he said, hey, we don't know anything about these giant white sharks because they're so big, no one has ever been able to capture them and handle them and let them go alive. So we can get the smartest scientists in the world an opportunity to use the latest technology to explode the body of knowledge forward so that we then can understand where the nursery is, understand where the breeding aggregation is. And I was like, wow, that's cool. I just didn't know we knew so little. And it made a lot of sense. It was about handling the last of the ocean's giants for the brightest people in the world. And in order to do that, you needed to bring groups together that maybe oftentimes hadn't worked in the past. And I said, well, what about sharks makes this, why sharks? What's the big deal? I'm an ocean guy, I'm not really a shark guy. And they said, well, most of our sharks are in trouble. I said, well, what's the big deal if that happens? They said, well, they're the lion of the ocean. If you remove the apex predator from the system collapses. So there is no robust path forward for the ocean without lots of sharks. I was like, okay, well, I understand now the urgency. But the sharks, they got a bad PR agent. They need a new brand manager. They got a perception problem, but the reality is that up to 73 million are killed a year for a bowl of soup. So we're finning sharks, so up to, people talk about up to 100 million. We know, 73 million for sure. So I'm sitting back and I'm like, wow. Really, for a bowl of soup, are you trying to tell me, just from a common sense perspective, so I can just get my head around this, we're trading the future of the ocean for a bowl of soup? Yeah. So, well, that does not pass the common sense test. That just does not pass the common sense test. So I said, okay, we'll help you. And we needed a global asset to do that. We needed kind of something that could make the impossible possible, and that's this, our ship, the OCEARCH. I had an opportunity to buy this on a handshake in Costa Rica for about a third of what it was worth. And I mustered together everything I had, and I did that. And I wasn't quite sure how it was going to work, but I thought, you know, maybe we can get Captain Brett, we can leverage this lift to make the impossible possible. We can try to get these sharks into this lift, get them out of the water, give world-class scientists access they've never had before in history. So, in order to do that, we were going to have to put together a team that had never happened before. And I went back to the dinner table like, okay, Captain Brett, here's what we got to do. We're going to get on this ship. We're going to ride out to this island 200 miles offshore, and we're going to catch these giant things that no one's ever caught before. We're going to let them go in good shape so we can solve the puzzle of their lives. I was like, wow, that seems kind of an overwhelming task. And I thought back to the dinner table, you know, especially for the kids, what my parents used to say, don't ever get overwhelmed by the scale of the challenge or the problem. Just keep inching forward. And what seems impossible, if you keep inching forward, soon is right there before you. They used to say, an inch is a cinch, a yard is very hard. So just keep inching forward. I remember the fear of heading out with Brett on that trip. In the scale of the challenge, there was no book how to do it. And we went out there and we got beat up. But the fact was, we came together, we learned, because the biggest room in the world is the room for improvement. And we continued improving and improving until we proved the method and finalized the method and continue to improve every day today. So this is what happened when we headed out there to see if this was doable.
Now he's coming in. Stop, you guys. Go. Let go. Slack. Up.
When that lift goes in the water, we're exposed.
Roll him over if you can.
I'm just going to end. You have no idea.
Push, moving. Everybody up.
What we can do is help the smartest people in the world catch things they have no chance of getting without us. So I remember the moment when that happened, we were like, wow, this is possible. We can solve the global great white shark puzzle. If we can create a system to fund it and share it with the world that is sustainable. And I already knew at this point, you know, we were going to have to leverage TV to do it. Do any of you kids know who the guy is up there swimming with that 4,000-pound shark? That's Captain Brown. And that shark right there is the biggest fish in the world that's ever been caught, and it was released alive, and her name is Amy. That guy up there is the size of me, so this is about the size of a minivan or something. And Amy was important. I remember at that moment, we knew like, wow, we can do this. A mature female, she's going to show us where the breeding site is and where the nursery is, if we can track her long enough. And so she headed out. They said that they thought that she was going to give birth off of California. That was their best guess. And here's what happened when we tracked Amy for 18 months.
It's Amy who now shows the way. While their other white sharks eventually leave Sofa to head back towards the mating sites, Amy takes a radical detour straight into the Sea of Cortez. And her timing suggests she's ready to give birth.
So Amy went 3,000 miles from where they said the nursery was. That was groundbreaking, right? Because we then, for the first time, had data. We've now leveraged that to shut down the commercial fishing of sharks during the birthing season. So the sharks have some room. So, right, pioneering methods, collaborating groups, new data, new policy, you know, step forward. So that was really, really exciting when that happened with Amy. And we were able to understand that we could solve the puzzle. But the next challenge, I said, if we are going to create a centrist, data-driven approach and be able to command a conversation at scale that can affect things globally, we got to build a global brand. We got to have people know who we are around the world. So we began to kind of, I was trying to find a path to fund it. I couldn't afford to fund it. And so I started a production company. So I'm going to make a show about it, and I'm going to take half the money and fund the research, and the other half, pick the show. So not only were we going to leverage TV to build a global brand that we could influence, so that we could leverage it to influence a centrist, data-driven discussion with policymakers, we were going to leverage it to build a global brand in 180 countries and 30 languages, and We got paid $20 million over 4 years to make those TV shows, and we took $10 million and funded the research. We took the other $10 million and made the show. So it was social entrepreneurship at its best, you know, social entrepreneur, private venture for public good. We were finding a way, but we were having to make little compromises all along the way. After we were on the National Geographic Channel for 3 years, we had an opportunity to go to the History Channel, and what I wanted to do here is I was trying to help everybody understand that modern day exploration is still really happening in the world today. And I wanted to try to be inclusive, and I wanted everyone to see it's not perfect all the time. When you're trying to do something that no one's ever done before, you're constantly learning, and it's very intense. So this is the opening of Shark Wranglers, and this is when we started to I really started to want to help share how really hard it was to do this with the world.
On the other side of the world, in some of the most treacherous waters on Earth, here we go, hold on. A team of American fishermen are stalking the planet's most notorious killer. White shark. Their mission?
Watch out, Brett!
Hand catch, GPS tag and track a record number of great whites. To decode the mystery of the predators' hunting and breeding grounds and how close they swim to shore. Risking it all, these brave fishermen get closer to the sharks than anyone else dares.
Go in, Brett! You're going in!
Leaping from our world into theirs.
Out of the water! Pick it up! Big swell, Brett! Come in, big swell!
They battle face to face to save man from shark
Here goes the sail!
and shark from man.
Pull it up! Pull it up! Pull it up!
So we were leveraging TV, and you could see it was much more intense, but I was already starting to feel all these little compromises I was always being forced to make. Like you heard there, even in the opening of the show, you know, they're tracking the world's most notorious killer. Well, that's so off-brand for us. That's so off-mission for us. But, you know, you're trying to find social entrepreneurial journey through a path to fund things that cost millions of dollars a year, and these are these constant little things that we have to try to well, is it worth it? So even while we were doing it and leveraging it and funding science, we knew that no matter what happened, we had to attempt to transcend TV as soon as possible. Because by getting big enough to be able to be funded without needing TV would be the only way we could always stay 100% on mission. So we began trying to understand, even in the midst of television, how are we going to get into a situation where we can generate millions of dollars a year to fund this and not have to keep making compromises? They started asking me like they would want to be a fight with Brett. Because that's the silliness that works on TV today. But the problem is, if you want to deal with policymakers and meet with presidents so you can affect the future of the planet or the future of that region, you can't be the fool on TV on Thursday night. So we began to try to find a way. How can we become more inclusive? How can we find another path to keep things going? And while we were down in South Africa, we also started to see we needed to disrupt things a little bit in research. It was too institutionally focused. So because we could provide access and funding that no one else could, we said, we'll come down and help you in the largest white shark research project in history, but we got to get all of your institutions, all your smart men and women on the ship so we can maximize this learning opportunity for the 15 minutes we have with the sharks. So these people who used to compete for grants against one another and all had different parts of the puzzle all came together on the ship. And suddenly now it's ocean first. not institution first. They're collaborating, they're coming together, and they all got different parts of the puzzle. And the guy they used to think they didn't like, they really like. They got so much in common, and their head and light bulbs are going off on deck while they're chatting. Because this guy's got a third of the puzzle, and this lady has a third of the puzzle, and the guy over there's got a third of the puzzle, but they used to not talk. That's not ocean first. We're only ocean first. Our angle is there is no angle. Sharks and ocean first. So the collaborative effect began to like galvanize the community down there, and I started to see a model in my head. I was like, okay, this is powerful. Then what about the rate of learning? You bring all these people together with world-class mariners like this, provide them access they've never dreamed with the latest technology, and you explode the body of knowledge forward at a rate at which absolutely just covers the scientist up with data. So you get all these people busy. And instead of supporting one or two institutions and one or two individuals, you're supporting dozens of institutions and the brightest people around the world, and they're all working together. And then they start to rethink all the other stuff they're doing. Because they're aligned in so many ways. See Dr. Scomel's up there. He's number 3 on the list. When he saw this, he was upset. He told me he wanted the slide changed, and he wanted to be number 1 on the list. I didn't have time. There's over 40 papers being written on our research right now. So the power is, right, if you need published data to affect policy, which is what you need, the more scientists you cover up and the more published papers you can have written with the greatest data that they've ever had before, means you can affect more policy with the best information you've ever had. It also helps increase public safety. Because now there's this wealth of data that's never existed that public officials have access to because we open source everything. The concept of data and ownership does not exist. It's for the ocean. So the rate of learning we're exploded, right? 200,000 sharks were finned today. 200,000 a day. We must learn fast. So we must not only learn things we've never learned, we must learn them at a rate we've never learned them before. So here's South Africa. We went down there. They didn't know where their sharks went. They couldn't affect policy.
Mine just said that 3 more great whites were caught in Tofu near Mozambique, straight from the beach, a long line.
Marine biologist Alison Koch tells Chris about recent illegal shark finning off of Mozambique.
These fish are globetrotters, man. They move thousands and thousands of miles.
So it's more than likely the same animals.
Right?
Both believe the same sharks that bring in millions of tourist dollars every year to South Africa are traveling up to the waters of Mozambique.
If we can show connectivity between South Africa and Mozambique, which we already suspect, then we can help trying to push for protection there as well.
So, you know, what's the point if you learn all this stuff and you don't affect policy, right? Like, would anybody, any kids, would you play a game and, you know, like if it was a tie game, would you walk off with a minute to go? Or would you finish? Right? So we must take what we learn and affect policy, and here you see just a few months after our study engaged there, our sharks were living in Mozambique. As a matter of fact, one of them named Brenda got killed in Mozambique, and the tag went right up on the beach and right into the fishing village, and we sent some people up there to find it. And we found out, you know, that the shark was killed, the man came, he took the fins away. But in that particular instance, it was a very poor, poor village, and they ate the entire shark. So when you talk about management in the future of things, you know, that's not really our problem. Finning of 73 million sharks a year on a commercial, international, factory way is the problem, not the fishing village trying to prevent themselves from starving. But the fact of the matter was, we now had data, so we could get the South African and Mozambique government together to start to figure out what we're going to do across the range of the South African white sharks. And then we started to, this is Sea Lab in New Bedford, we started to engage schools. This was right before last fall. So last fall, the TV thing, History Channel called me in August, and they're like, we're not renewing the show. The third time I thought I was going to lose my house. And I remember some, I just got rush of emotions. We scraped together the last we had, and we came up here, and I was like, I'm going to just give the last of everything I have to Cape Cod, and hopefully Greg can solve the puzzle of Jaws, and if I lose the ship in the house, then I'll write a book or something. I'll get a job, I know how to work. And so we came up here, and I got so emotional, I completely lost track of where I'm at. So we came up here last fall. What had really changed? They canceled the show. So suddenly, this changed everything for me across so many platforms. We were able to invite everybody to come on out and check it out. It was like the last Swan song. It's like, let's invite the global media, because we couldn't invite them before, because if the press came on the ship during the expeditions, it would scoop the series that was going to air 8 months later, and the networks wouldn't let us do it. So we were doing like 35 million impressions a year on this television show, and when we invited the global press to come out here last year, when we caught Mary Lee and Jeannie, they took the content we gave them, which had our sponsors integrated into it, with Caterpillar, things like that, we just gave to them because they've been helping us on a small scale. And suddenly the news media spread the story about our work, and we went from doing 35 million impressions a year in television, we did 100 million impressions in the month of October. And I was like, oh wow, I think I see a way. This is not a TV show where a blue chip company or a smart company has their logo. This is a news story about pioneering research to create a sustainable future for the planet while we educate our kids. And there must be blue chip brands in this world today that want to do something great for the planet that's good for the brand. And so we started just giving away the content. We started just give it all away. And suddenly I remember, I was like, wow, the more we give away, the more inclusive we are, the bigger this thing gets. So what I want to do is just try to include everybody, create a massive following, and then monetize it with blue chip companies. The Google model of research, the Google model of exploration. And it started to get a little bit of traction. I was like, wow, here's a way to stay 100% on mission and have a generational journey, because we got a generational challenge. Not a 5-year run on TV, which is a long run on TV. So it was really interesting. Began then going and talking to kids, being more inclusive. The kids were thrilled with what we were doing. They were so captivated that not only talking to them, I was like, I gotta give the data away. I gotta give it all away. I remember my accountant coming in and saying, Chris, the shark tracker thing's a good idea, man. It's gonna be pretty cool. We should charge $1. I said, no, man, we gotta give it away. He goes, but we don't have any money. We gotta charge $1. I said, no, man, we'll figure it out. We gotta give it away. And we gave it away, and this was for the first time in history that the whole world could follow along while we solved this 400 million-year-old puzzle with the brightest scientists in the world and actually participate in it in real time rather than hear about it 3 years later.
First time on a white shark in the North Atlantic, we've been able to put a real-time satellite tag on one of these fish, and in this case it's Jeannie. What happens with this tag is anytime she comes to the surface, it transmits a ping to a satellite which picks it up, relays it back to us, and we can actually track her movements on the shark tracker. So Jeannie, when we tagged her right up here off of Monomoy, moved almost 40 miles south to this area we call Nantucket Shoals, which is just east of Nantucket Island. I didn't know white sharks spent any time on Nantucket Shoals, and here she is, boom, right there. That's the beauty of the new technology.
So the global chart, inclusive is inspiring. Exclusive is not, it's a turnoff. So the global shark tracker began to be incredibly inclusive, and then I would go speak to these schools after the tracker, and I would go in, and these brilliant teachers, they would have created their own curriculum around the tracker. They got their kids tracking the sharks, and then they're learning math. And I'm like, oh wow, I have to find a way to get this to every kid. We got them captivated by the real-time tracking of the shark. Let's leverage that to create free, world-class dynamic learning tools. So whether you're in the ghetto or in the boarding school, you have access to the greatest, most modern STEM-based educational tools while you're tracking white sharks in real time. So I went out and I found a company, Landry, to fund a full K-12 STEM-based educational curriculum that launches in the new OSearch Educational Hub at the end of this month with 6th through 8th grade math and physics. So these very sharks that we'll catch here this month we'll develop the data set that will be the math curriculum for those kids around the world to use for free. In fact, we found out that some of these schools don't even have money for paper or ink, so we put all the tests and quizzes in the hub, and once the kids take the test, it grades it and emails their teacher the answers. So there's no excuse. We are going to disrupt education the same way we've disrupted television, the institutional approach to exploration and research. When you put the ocean and the kids first, everything else works out. And so now we will have, I'm just so thrilled about the educational hub that Your Sharks will start with the kids this fall. We also have the iPhone app that's free for everyone. You can track the sharks. The Android app launches in about 10 days. So everyone, inclusion, everyone is allowed to see it. So now, why are we here? Sorry for the background. I get passionate about it, I lose myself. This is an update on the news story that happened last year that's going to bring you into what's going on this year with some kind of, we're going to give you a live expedition update here in a few minutes of what's actually happened on the water this past week. So this should bring everyone up to speed.
Learn about great white sharks by catching them and then tagging them with GPS trackers.
It is one great story. Two of the group's founders are here to update us on their historic research off Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Jeff Glore is also with us. Jeff, good morning.
Charlie, Nora, good morning to you. We were there for the spot, tag, and release of a white shark, and since our last report, OCEARCH caught and released another. Here's a quick look back.
About a 15-foot shark. They're big, robust sharks.
Last month, as a group called OCEARCH caught and then maneuvered a live 2,000-pound white shark onto their boats, history was made in the waters off Cape Cod.
I can't.
For the first time ever in the North Atlantic, a satellite-enabled spot tag is fixed to a shark's dorsal fin, which can track its behavior for up to 5 years.
Okay, tag's done.
It's an aggressive, extraordinarily difficult method, but OCEARCH founder Chris Fisher says it's needed to learn more about great whites.
We don't know where they breed, we don't know where they feed, we don't know where they give birth. Until we figure that out, we can't even put policy in place to protect them and make sure they have a future.
Fisher believes they need protection mainly from finning, which kills up to 73 million sharks a year. OCEARCH is a team of sport fishermen that is hooked up with scientists.
This has never been tried.
Like Dr. Greg Scomo.
How is it possible we really don't know anything about them? Well, because we've spent a lot of time trying to figure out why they occasionally bite people and not necessarily how they live.
5 days after catching Jeannie, their first white shark off Cape Cod.
Coming under to you, Jody. Coming right at you, Jody. We are hooked up.
The OCEARCH team caught and spot tagged an even bigger one. A 3,500-pound female named Mary Lee.
Oh, yeah, Mary Lee!
The two sharks are now pinging in with their location, so their latest movements can be accessed by anyone online.
So you look at a story like that, right, and you're just like, wow, you know, what's the quality of that message with brands integrated into it, content, you know, brand is content within this unique content we're delivering to the world, compared to a logo on a TV show where a couple of fools are fighting on the deck of a ship. There's no comparison, right? So you start to see these blue chip smart companies, there's really not very many places for them to go on TV anymore, because their brands are so blue chip and so clever or smart, and the TV is not. So we started to create a vehicle to achieve great scale. I can tell you this is wild. So far, year to date, there's been over 3,000 stories worldwide on our work, and we've driven over 300 million earned media impressions and integrated the brands that have supported us into those stories. Vastly more powerful than television, and most importantly, 100% on mission. Most importantly, a sustainable path forward, a predictable, buildable business model that will create millions of dollars for field-based research that we can then, it allows us to give it away. So then it's always ocean first, kid first. Really interesting journey, right? And the only reason we figured this out is because we were never satisfied, because no matter how good you get at something, the biggest room in the world is the room for improvement. Right? So let's see where Mary Lee is today. She went right down to the southeast. Shocking how far she's traveled since last September, huh? She came down in the Southeast. This is where I started to see the educational curriculum. I started to see like Mary Lee swimming from Charleston to Jacksonville against the 2-knot current in 24 hours is a much cooler math problem than Bob got on the train in Philly and Bob got off the train in New York. How fast did the train go? And the geography too, a lot of geography. When I have, if I had a red pointer, I'd give the kids, we'd get them going, but I don't have one. So Mary Lee came down, and quickly it was apparent the southeastern United States is a very important part of her life. Why? I think Dr. Scommel knew that. He had a hunch on that. But it immediately gave us this real-time data so we could get the rate of learning. Instead of figuring this out over 3 years, in 3 months we were in Jacksonville trying to catch another shark to take the next leap forward. What are they doing down there? Pretty powerful. Nobody's been able to plan expeditions at that rate and pace to affect what you're learning now, to keep pushing the science forward. All we do is chase the data. Remember, the angle is there's no angle. So we went down there and we were able to catch Lydia's one of the many times I've asked Captain Brett and the guys to do something spots like, Captain, oh, we gotta go down there, we gotta catch white shark. Get a tag on it, figure out what's going on. Says, well, nobody's ever done that before. I said, I know, but we need to go try, or it's not gonna happen unless we try. And sure enough, he went down and he pulled it off. And when we went down there, a couple interesting things about this track. You know, Southeast is clearly an enormous part of her life. She headed back, this is Mary Lee, named after my mom, I think I said that right. She went up to New York in the wintertime, I think really surprised Dr. Scommel. Spent weeks in 40-degree water. We didn't really know they did that. Then she swam down off Bermuda. Great new shark book, just published earlier this year. Phenomenal resource by very nice, very good guy, a scientist named Castro. It says there's no white sharks in Bermuda. They got the permanent marker out right now. Mary Lee went past Bermuda, and then she came, look, she's right back as of this morning in the Southeast. Again, why is she there? My hunch, she's gestating, right? Letting her babies grow. So then that led us to the Southeast, and this is what happened down there in the Southeast, leaping forward to knowledge quickly.
He's on it, he's on it. He just ate it. Going under the boat. Not bored anymore. So then get off, lift goes back down to buoy her a little bit, and then roll her back up on her belly so she's upright. Let me know if she's coming across or if I got her look out. She looks good, just come straight. You're good. Make sure you can get that thing in the face, that hose. You got that? I'll take the checklist there, Brandon. Total length. 14 feet total. 14-foot female shark. Scalpel? No scissors. Yeah. We already got the parasites. 11 and a half minutes. Spot tag, accelerometer next. All right, we got the accelerometers going on now. We're good. Spot's on. All right, when they're ready, I'll come in. We got Scommel is getting blood. Great job, Scommel. Muscle quad. All right, when they're ready, I'll come in. All right, beautiful. I mean, she looks very placid. She looks great. Her color's great. Water flow's good. The shark, the first one in history tagged off Florida like this, is named Lydia Moss. She is the founder of Bradley at University of Peoria, Illinois, a wonderful friend of Caterpillar. Lydia. Yeah, Lydia! Do your thing, big girl! She's coming back around, Brad! Right up back. Yeah, Lydia! Yeah! Can you believe it? Unbelievable! Jacksonville, Florida, white shark!
That really was amazing. I mean, know, we knew we were coming up with everything on the line, and we didn't even know if we were going to be able to get one. But, you know, fortune favors the bold, as Virgil said. So where is Lydia? Lydia is, she was tagged off Jacksonville, and she went the opposite direction. Look, she went to Bermuda too. Everybody's still over there with their markers, you know, they're still going, wow. And then we thought, oh look, she's going to Cape Cod. Then she hung a U-turn and headed out to the middle of the Atlantic, and now, just a couple days ago, she was 12 miles away from Mary Lee. Crazy. 12 miles away, after wandering thousands and thousands of miles. So, you talk about, you know, what is there to do, what has been done. You can see the first puzzle we solved was that Guadalupe puzzle over there in the Pacific side of the North America. All the green ships are expeditions we've executed. This is our 17th expedition. We're funded on the water, just the ship portion of what we do, by Caterpillar now. You started to see in that Lydia video how that was integrated into the content. That content went out across 27,000 media outlets, generating, you know, it's like this. Here, blue chip brand. If you give me a couple $1 million, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go pioneer research to create a sustainable future for the planet while we educate our kids. And then we're going to give that content to the news. They're going to play it around the world. You're going to generate $20 million worth of earned media. Oh, and by the way, we're going to give everything away so that we create these world-class STEM-based educational tools so our kids grow up with free world-class learning tools so that 25 years later you can hire them and they're world-class employees. They're like, well, that's pretty clever. But again, it's building, right? So Caterpillar comes in, blue chip company, funds our work, ask for nothing. Just, you know, stay data-driven, stay centrist, ocean first, kids first. It's like a dream come true. It's amazing, like, evolution. So at the end of this, through 2015, when they help us on the water, we will have led our 25th expedition. I'll be 47. I think Captain Brett will be 48. 25th expedition, end of 2015. Cousteau led 27. So, I'm not sure what that means. But that's like one of the measuring sticks, that's the bar. It's like Jack Nicklaus 18 majors, right? We're going to lead 50 expeditions. So, the blue chip company stepped in. Costa, you see the Costa hat, right? They fund all the filmmaking so we can make the films that these guys around here are making, and we can give it away so the kids, we're now integrating them into the education program. So when you start talking about, you know, I'm transitioning now into what's going on, you know, I normally close here, but we have a kind of an expedition update that's coming after this, but I think the point is here for the kids, you know, the biggest room in the world is the room for improvement. No matter how good you get at something, you can always get better. And no matter how big the challenge is, you must inch forward, and what seemed once impossible is impossible. I never would have dreamed, as a boy chasing small and largemouth bass around the woods and creeks of Kentucky, that I would be standing here with you, with world-class mariners, world-class scientists, trying to make a global impact on the future of the ocean and give it away. But anything is possible. An inch is a cinch, a yard is very hard. So, that's the end of normally what I talk about, right? We normally close here, but right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the filmmaking that Costa makes happen. We are putting out, there's already been 2 films that have come off the water from our work out front. I don't know if you've seen them. If you go to the OSearch Facebook page, if you go to the Chris Fisher Facebook page or just osearch.org, every week there's about 3 films coming out so you can see what's happening real time. And when a shark gets released, it immediately goes up on the tracker. You can begin tracking it. And when the kids come to school at the end of August, they're going to be doing their math and physics and geography classes around the real-time dynamic tracking of your Cape Cod sharks. Free for the world. So here's what's going on. We're going to show you 2 short films right now. This is what's going on this past week. Yeah, loud and clear. He's about coming down our port side.
coming up with the barrel over. That's a full body big shark right there. No tag, no tag. No tag, no plasters. It's a full-bodied shark right there.
It's day one. We're about a quarter mile off the beach here in south of Chatham, Massachusetts. We have got plenty of seals on the beach. We've got a lot of activity. This is the hot spot for white sharks in all of the Atlantic Ocean. And we have a nice big female, 14 feet long, swimming right up our slick. So we've gone from real slow, bored, to ramping right up here. Super excited about the fact that we may have a shark in the next couple of hours. We'll see though.
All right, let's go ahead and roll the next one right away.
Oh, right here. Yeah, it's a smaller hook shark, I think. Yeah, it's a smaller shark. 12 foot. That's like a stout 12-footer. Stout 12-footer. Unbelievable. The land of the unhungry shark. And these guys over there aren't losing a bunch of fish to white sharks. You know, you'd hear about sharks eating people's fish off the line here. Nobody's been saying that.
Seals.
It's about the seals, huh? They can be anywhere along in here.
I don't know if there's a morning bite or evening bite or lunch bite or what. We had one that came up to us last night with 15, 20 minutes left of daylight, and then we had two right at lunch. So I feel like it can happen anytime.
Let's see. Got a long way to go before this whole thing's over, so. We'll see.
The waiting and the waiting and the waiting. So we're going to go into now. I mean, we have two major parts of the expedition here when you look at trying to manage a team of 20. I think we can stop the video. There we go. Why don't you put up the tracker? So when you execute an expedition like this, you have to have multiple plans, right? So we have our fishing master, Captain Brett, here, who's managing all of that operation for me to make sure we can attempt to capture the samples. With Dr. Scommel here, it's going to bring us up to speed on the science, and you all are actually part of our first land expedition plan. We've really engaged the community during the expedition. We feel like it's more inclusive. Being inclusive is inspiring. So let's bring up Captain Brett McBride to give you the rundown on what we've seen out there on the water and what's going on, and Dr. Scommel will bring us up to speed on some science, and then we'll take some questions.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'll start off and tell you a little bit of a recap of kind of what happened last year from my perspective. You know, I remember a lot of really strong current and very short windows of opportunity when we had very good fishing conditions because of that really strong current makes it just difficult to fish and chum. And I do remember the fact that neither one of the sharks we got last year actually ate a bait. So I've been thinking about that all year long. Thinking about coming back here, what am I going to do? What if they don't want to eat the bait? Last year we were lucky enough to have them come up and try to eat the outboard engines and gave us and they, while they had their mouth wide open, facing up, presented itself an opportunity for a hook in the shark's mouth and actually physically hook it in the corner of the mouth. And that was the only reason why we got those 2 sharks last year, and I'm thinking about that when we came here. So this time we showed up, we have the state of Massachusetts really stepped up and gave us the permits that we needed to get this job done, which means we really needed to be closer to the beach. Last year we had a lot of time sitting around waiting for something that was, we felt like we were about 3 miles away from where we needed to be, because we were 3 miles offshore in federal water. This time we came in here and we felt pretty good about where we were going to go, right up next to the seals. The seals do the chumming. There's very little chumming necessary when you're sitting right in front of a big old colony of seals. So you're trying to get the ones that are already there to take a little bit of attention and pay attention to your boat for a few minutes. Now we've already seen 7, maybe 6, at least 6, but we think 7 sharks since we've been. And we started fishing on Wednesday. So the 31st, 1st, and 2nd were our fishing days. So we've seen more sharks than we saw the whole time by far last time. So it shows that we are in the right spot. But one thing I did notice, and the thing that I have been concerned about, was are they going to be interested in what we have to offer them? And so far, the one that you saw up there, that was the longest we had anything look around, but it still never came up and sniffed at the baits or looked at them very hard, just right by, uninterested. And then the other sharks that we've seen, the other 6, even less. So we've had them just come right up the back of the boat, take a quick look at what we had in the water, and just bug out. It's really green water, so you can't even see where they go. All you can do is just kind of hope that they come back, and that hasn't been the case. So right now we'll be fishing again on Monday. We have very strong currents most of the day. We have 2 windows of opportunity usually that the sharks are showing up, and each time, every one of these 7 sharks showed up during that slap. That's kind of where we're at right now, and we're trying to modify a few things. You don't really start changing your patterns or the things you'll try until you have some failures. You go with what's worked in the past, and if they're not interested in that, then we start going back to the drawing board and saying, okay, what can we do different to fish more effectively during the strong periods of current, and is there anything else that we can do to entice them when they get next to the boat? So we're zeroing in on it right now. I'm getting pretty excited about Monday. Let me introduce Dr. Greg Stolman.
Thank you guys. If that's not inspiring, then you can't be inspired as far as I'm concerned. These guys are amazing. I've been really lucky to work with them for the last, well, we're coming up on a year now. This is our 3rd expedition together, and it has been a learning experience for me. I talk a lot in Orleans and Chatham, and many of you have probably seen me speak, so I'm not going to go through my whole litany of science-based stuff, but I will give you a little bit of a sense of what we've been able to achieve and how science is changing. I'm going to take 5 minutes to just tell you a little bit about how I've changed as a scientist in recent years. I was really trained as a classical ichthyologist, fisheries scientist, which means that I studied a lot of dead things, including sharks. Most of the sharks I ever studied were dead in front of me, and I would cut them open and look at various aspects of their biology. And so we learn a little bit about life history in terms of what they eat, their maturity level, growth rates, those kinds of things. But you never learned a heck of a lot about their behavior, what they did from day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute, or second to second. All you have is a dead fish in front of you. But with the changing technology that we've got now, with small batteries and satellite capabilities, how rapidly it's changed in the last few decades, we have new tools. And these new tools have opened up all new doors. So it's been a real fascinating time for me to be a scientist. And I tell this a lot to people. I know I don't look that old, but when I was in college, we didn't have computers. We had big ugly mainframes with really bad languages that none of us knew, like Fortran and BASIC. And now we're taking laptops and actually strapping them to fish. And we're learning about their biology at remarkable scales. And these guys are facilitating that. You know, these couple of videos you've seen, yeah, we're waiting it out, but it's only been 3 days. There's plenty of sharks there, and if anyone can catch them, it's these professionals right behind me. So I'm pretty optimistic, I'm pretty excited. I've got some of the technology with us today. Heather Marshall, right here next to me, is a student over at the University of Massachusetts working on her PhD. And she's looking specifically at stress physiology. Yes, sharks do get stressed. Probably not so much as I do during these whole exploitations, or my wife as she's trying to control my 2 little kids here. Eve, Will, behave yourselves, please. All right, I'll make you stand up here, and I know you don't like that. So we've got these new technologies, and the premier technology that OCEARCH gives us the opportunity to use, us being the scientific community, is the spot tag. And the spot tag is right here. This is bolted to the dorsal fin. You've seen it bolted to the dorsal fin. When this tag comes to the surface, it transmits to a satellite so that you and I and the rest of the world can enjoy seeing where this shark is in near real time, right on the shark tracker. So we've had the chance to put, how many now, globally, white sharks? 60 plus white sharks on that tracker. We just added 3 makos and a blue shark at Montauk last weekend when I was there. So now we're broadening it every day as scientists come on board, as more and more animals. You know, at some point you're going to say, why is this called a shark tracker? There's birds and turtles and marine mammals on it, and that's where the future is. Bringing you folks into the fold is the way to do this, and Chris and the OCEARCH have just perfected the ability to do that. Because if you're on board, I'm on board, we're all on board, and these animals will be around for many, 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 maybe another 450 million years, and that's really my goal. So we got the spot tag, we put the spot tag on, and we got the pop-up satellite tag, which I've talked a lot about. The pop-up satellite tag gives us 3-dimensional movement data. It's a data logger. It collects data on depth and temperature and light levels, and then it comes off the shark. Actually, all these tags ultimately come off the shark simply because everything man puts in the water comes apart. That's just the way it is. And when you start throwing electronics in the water, then you got all kinds of problems. But believe it or not, sometimes it works. And when it works, it's amazing to see what happens. So these pop-up satellite tags actually come off the sharks, float to the surface, transmit data, and give us a sense of what that shark did in terms of temperature and depth. And we correlate that really well with the spot tag.
We also do something very, very exciting. We do surgery on each shark that comes up, if you didn't know that. We do surgery. We actually cut through the abdominal wall and place this acoustic tag into the body cavity of the shark and suture it right up. And all this is happening in, 15 minutes or less. Well, these guys are, making sure this shark doesn't go around and grab me and tear me to shreds. That's probably one thing my wife appreciates. Well, maybe not. Oh no, you're home. These acoustic tags send out a very, very high acoustic signal. It is a high frequency thing, and it's picked up by acoustic receivers we put around Cape Cod. And so it's a great way to find out where the sharks spend their time when they're around Cape Cod. And it turns out that they like to be primarily from Orleans south to the southern tip of Monomoy, which is why we go and spend all our time there every day trying to catch these things. I don't know if this thing's dying or what, but, and then I've got a whole bunch of other scientists which I have not met. You met Heather here. I don't know if Jimmy G's in the room. Jimmy here? Hey Jimmy, right there. Dr. Jim Gelslider, he's from University of North Florida. He's everything. Jimmy just arrived today. Affectionately known as Jimmy G by all of us in the field. He's a shark endocrinologist, specialist. He studies reproductive biology, he studied agent growth. He's a master at what he does, and really excited to have Jimmy on board. He's going to actually be doing ultrasounds on the shark. So we can see, when you try to test Chris's hypothesis, are these girls, Lydia and Mary Lee, pregnant? Well, we're not going to answer that unless we catch them again, and we're probably not going to. But the sharks we do capture tomorrow and the next day and the next day, Jimmy G is going to check to see if they're pregnant. Of course, they've got to be female. But hopefully we will catch those fish. And that's not been done before very easily on a big white shark. Because everything I looked at when I was a younger scientist was dead. And now we can learn all these things about them while they're alive. So we've got Simon Thorold from the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. We take a muscle sample, and that can actually tell us what the shark eats. Because you are what you eat. And we can pull that from the muscle. It's called stable isotope analysis. Corrigan here. Where are you? Are you hiding? There, come on now. Shannon Corrigan is here from the College of Charleston in South Carolina. She too just landed. She is a geneticist, a specialist. She's been all over the world studying sharks, including life, and she's going to be on board for the next few days. We've assembled an incredible team of scientists coming from all over the place because they want to be included to do the work, and they want to share it with you. And who am I missing? I've got Woods Hole Oceanographic, I've got Georgia Aquarium involved. We're taking blood samples for stress physiology. We're looking at contaminants. So we're putting 5 different kinds of tags on these sharks. We're taking blood, we're taking tissue, we're taking genetic samples. We're taking parasites for my friend George Bennett at Middle Tennessee State University. And you know, this is amazing. You saw the GoPro footage all stand up as we jump onto the platform, and believe me, you know, when you come up against one of these giant animals and it's alive, it's nerve-wracking. I gotta tell you, I'm shaking when that happens. But you get off that thing and you've just achieved what was impossible just a few years ago. It's one of the most exciting moments of your life, at least for me as a marine scientist, to have the opportunity to do that. And it all happens very, very quickly. It's all choreographed beforehand. We actually act it out on the deck. We usually get the biggest guy on the boat to lay down. And we take a muscle tissue. He's got 4 acoustic tags in him right now. Because we had to keep practicing until it's perfect. But that's a little bit about the science. And I'm going to end right there because I want to first of all thank Cynthia Wigren and Ben Wigren for putting this together, for supporting our research. They're a relatively new nonprofit, but they have made a mark and they're making a difference. And I want to thank them. And one of the programs that they have put forth to try to raise money is a white shark license plate. Who wants a white shark license plate? Kids, tell mom and dad that's what you want on all the cars. All right, a white shark license plate. Now, to make this white shark license plate realistic and at the same time real cool, I called a friend of mine whose name is Paul McPhee. I hope Paul McPhee is here. As a matter of fact, I see him right in the corner. Paul McPhee did that license plate. He is an amazing white shark artist, and he is going to unveil today, right in front of you, a new print that he's made, a new painting for the O-Search. Why don't you bring it down here, Paul, right now? Can you do that? Let's get a couple guys, Ben.
They're going to carry it for me.
Great. Folks, Paul McPhee, artist extraordinaire. I'm going to turn it right over to you, brother.
Well, like Greg said, my name is Paul McPhee. I'm a marine life artist. I first started getting interested in great whites after seeing Jaws as a kid, and a few years later, after getting my artwork to the point where I could show it in galleries, I was in the Weiland galleries, and Weiland's like the whale guy, and I always wanted to be the great white guy like Weiland was the whale guy. But at the time, great whites weren't very popular. I mean, the people didn't really care for them too much. And it's just kind of funny how sharks have become the new whales. And so that dream that I had 20 years ago is starting to come true. So I've been friends with Greg for a few years, and that led to talking with Chris. And we spoke about doing some licensing with the artwork in order to raise money to help with their program. So this painting I just finished. It's in honor of Mary Lee. It's simply entitled Mary Lee. Thank you. Thank you so much. I've never met him in person. We've talked on Facebook. It's thrilling, you know. I gotta get my dad to buy that. I guess now, I mean, that's really, when you start to get like that collective energy, right? We got artists, we got educators, we got scientists, we got mariners, we got the kids. It's that inclusive, it's all for all of us.
that is really what is making it happen, because it is going to take all of us to make an impact on the future of the planet. So we're thrilled. That's never happened to us before. I think that's a sign that, you know, the model is moving in the right direction. So I guess what we want to do now is we want to take a few minutes of questions for anyone you'd like to chat with in the group here. And does anyone have any questions? Right there in the middle of the room. Yeah. Well, we're using a lot of bluefin tuna heads. A lot of, you know, in the past we've had a lot of success with tuna heads. And all sorts of other fish, you know, and squid. But we just really haven't even had a legitimate chance to switch one really onto a bait and see if they'll go. They've just been so quick moving through, other than the one. And you know, is it the time of the month? Is it like, are the next four going to come through and just eat them? You know, you just got to keep grinding it out. You know why? An inch is a cinch, and yard is very hard. So we're going to keep edging forward and then see how that plays out. And of course, we're going to try to adapt. We're going to try to make the setup more stealthy, right? Be a little bit more delicate, and see if we can, you know, feel and pique its interest. Yeah, just behind him there. Now, a lot of people ask why did he jump in the water. What happened was it really started happening with smaller animals. They're so squirrely they move around, and we just stuck with it. So what he's doing is he's jumping off, and he'll have the cable in his hand, and we'll pull the shark forward. And what he's doing is that the shark tries to swim outside the cradle. He just grabs the line and steers it in to make sure that when it comes into the cradle, it has to be centered, because we're executing so many science projects so fast that if it's up against a wall or if it's forward, we can't get around it to execute the 12 research projects in the 15 minutes we have. So, well, I think that's far more. I mean, that nobody knows what would happen. You'd probably kill some fish.
Yeah, we kill a fish.
Yeah, we just don't do that. You know, the idea is to get them to be as strong as possible, not bring them down. You know, you want to try to make it quick so they have a lot of their energy to, you know, on the release.
Well, we're not actually looking at hormones in the blood for stress. We're looking at different levels of like the chemistry, the blood makeup. So ions like calcium, potassium, we look at levels of lactate, glucose. We're trying to develop a method to look at a specific protein called heat shock protein. So we're going to be looking at that and seeing if that's a good indicator of stress. And then, I don't know, did you talk about the accelerometer? But the accelerometer also basically gives us an idea. It's this tag that goes on the fin, this big orange tag, and it gives information about the fish's swimming, how it's swimming, its pitch, its roll, stuff like that after it's released. And so that also actually gives us information about the recovery period of the fish. So what we're hoping to do is actually look at the levels of the stress indicators and then correlate that to recovery period and stuff like that. Well, what we found so far with the blood samples is that, you know, we still have some more work to do, but initially that they are stressed as you would expect, but really not that bad. You know, we're seeing, I think it's like a 4 to 6 window of recovery with the accelerometer, and, you know, compared to other fish that we've worked with, you know, the stress level is actually quite low. You know, it's good sign. So.
I've been tracking early fishing tags for the last 12 weekly.
Welcome. Welcome aboard.
Every week, telling people about it. Telling people about it. How come she came, Greg, you might be able to answer. We live here in Cape, but what was she doing up here in the middle of the winter? I mean, why? No food?
She just wanted to make sure that I didn't have a clue what I was doing. You know, because before we started, you know, putting these highly sophisticated tags on, I had a very simple, what I call, you might recall, the snowbird migratory pattern. You know, Cape Cod in the summer, Florida in the winter. That's very easy. I'm about ready to run to press on that, and then this guy calls me. You know, and then we tag Mary Lee and Lydia, and we find, no, we're not capturing what they're really doing. These movements are much more dynamic, much broader. And what are they doing in Long Island? What's it doing on the northeast peak of Georges Bank? And how did it catch that flight to Bermuda? That's what we're doing there. Yeah, she's moving very fast.
Close to the surface do they have to be for the tag to work? Because the other one you tagged last fall was almost a straight line from GPS line from here to Florida or Jacksonville, wherever. Whereas Mary Lee has been all over the place. How come? Close to the surface there.
Yeah, well, Mary Lee appears to spend much more time at the surface. That tag has to be on the water. Yeah, that's why it has to be mounted so high on the fish. Yeah, a lot of time. Yeah, one thing about the beautiful accelerometer we use, and as Heather mentioned, it's a highly sophisticated tag that gives us very, very high resolution fine scale data on what that animal is doing, you know, multiple times a second is collecting data. And what we found is that when we compare Mary Lee to Jeannie, who here has ever, you know, Jeannie doesn't come up, so who thought Jeannie was dead, right? Oh, Jeannie must be dead. No, and Jeannie's not dead. We are actually hearing from Jeannie twice yesterday, Chris tells me, but she's not up long enough for the satellite to calculate where she is. So it's kind of like Marco Polo. If the person stops screaming Marco, then, you know, it's all over.
What are the different colored dots? I've been wondering off African stuff.
It's the length of time it's been since their last paint. Right? So Mary Lee spends on average almost 9 minutes an hour at the surface.
In the first 8 hours of her release, she spent about 9 minutes per hour at the surface, and you see she's painting it all the time, right? But it's orange for the first 3 days, and then it turns green, and then it ages out. It's just so that you can quickly look and see, like, oh, I want to see everything that's painted in, like, right now. Oh, I see, we haven't heard from that one for 2 weeks. So that you can just quickly scan in there and see what's dynamic, what's changing now. I want to only look at what's changing. I don't want to look at the stuff that's the same as the last time I was here. But interesting, on the accelerometer in the first 8 hours of release, Mary Lee spent almost 9 minutes per hour on average at the surface. Jeannie, 25 seconds per hour. No time for the satellite to lock. And she's continued to do that over the course of the time of tracking.
I've been, from land, I've been actively searching, trying to have a sighting. And you're just telling me that I might have 9 minutes out of an hour to see a fin right at the surface or even less.
I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
In other words, my chances of having a sighting from shore would be lucky at best.
At best. Yeah, I mean, we live on the water, you know, all the time, 24 hours. We came off the ship to do this, we're going right back. Yeah, I mean, if you went and sat in front of the seal colony all day, every day, for a week, I think you'd probably see several interesting things. Yeah, but I mean, you know, if you just pop in an hour or two, you gotta, like, commit.
We're all looking pretty rugged. I'm a good cook. If you need someone else on board.
Yeah, sure, go ahead. Excellent question. Ever saw or ever tagged? What's the biggest fish you've ever tagged? That's what we're always waiting for this one to come. Maybe you can help us help Captain Brett figure that out, along with the other kids. Yeah, come on up here.
Just to tell you before we get started, the longest shark that we've caught is 17 feet 9 inches long. His name was Apache. But it's hard to tell what 17 feet 9 inches really looks like when you look at a shark like that without actually using something to measure it. So I brought this measuring tape, and I'll just hold it. I'll stand right over here. You hold the other end. Just keep on walking until you think you've got to 17 feet. Yeah, you can stop right around there. That's 17 feet 9 inches long. So you can see these are pretty large animals.
The interesting thing about that, these larger animals are also over 16 feet around. Yeah, go ahead, Lynn, right there.
First question, are the seals in South Africa different than they are up here? I mean, we don't talk about the breaching in Cape Cod like they do in Hulse Bay. I mean, it's a circus act down there. I didn't know if it was a different in breed, if it was different in the kind of food that the seals are chasing.
I mean, I can tell you what we talk about while we're bobbing around on the ocean day after day after day and what we think, and then we can give it. One of the nice things about being an explorer and fisherman is we get to guess about things. Dr. Scoble has to make hypotheses. I can't even say it. One of the big differences in the environment over there is they got the Cape Fur seal, right? We got the gray seal over here. Cape Fur seal's a little smaller. But the biggest difference is we're down here looking around for these fish in 17 feet of water. So if you're a 15 or 16 foot animal, you can't really propel your, if you try to leave, your tail's in the sand. Whereas over there, these seals are coming off these little islands and they're immediately right in 8 feet of water. You know, so if you're a big predator, you can get the, I think it's a lot about just the bathymetrics and the geography of the two different areas.
And the other thing I was wondering, I found it really interesting, last September, there was a male that was found dead off the coast of Rhode Island, was it? And after watching the whale that ate Jaws, how the Farallon, all the sharks disappeared, I didn't know if that dead shark might have had anything to do with the lack of catching or tagging in Cape Cod in September?
You mean the dead shark in Westport?
Right, it was like a week or so before the expedition, or a month, or...
Yeah, it was a week, yeah, I think it was the end of August. You know, I cut the thing up, but I don't remember anything. It's kind of sad when you get this old. But, yeah, we had the opportunity to cut that animal up, and you mentioned a show about orcas eating sharks, right? White sharks, and that was on Discovery, if I'm not mistaken. And you got to be careful. I know it's Shark Week. I know there's a really good show on tomorrow night at 9 o'clock with me in it. But having worked on Discovery shows for many years, I can tell you, be very careful. Not everything you hear or see is true. Okay? And Discovery's not going to like me for saying that. But let's face it, I try to be an objective scientist, and sometimes I see myself in these films and I say, oh boy, that's not real. No. But, so be careful with this Discovery stuff and everything. Of course, they also promote and exploit Shark Attack, which I absolutely do not agree with, and I've told their top people that many years in a row, and they don't seem to listen. But they are at least getting to a point where we're seeing more science. So I hope you enjoy the show tomorrow. But getting back to that, the orca show, yeah, that happened once. It's not likely that it happens a lot. I think the shark over in Westport was caught most likely by a gill netter. Working.
The shark, the dead carcass, because they were saying that one.
No, you mean
the Farallon Island.
It cleared them all out.
After it was a dead white shark.
Yeah, that's the part I don't believe, but that's okay. We need a little more empirical data before we can conclude those things, because after all, we have to test hypotheses, right? I'll let these guys answer that. For me, it's 7 weeks, but for these guys. Yeah, so for, the guys, they crossed the Atlantic Ocean twice. Last year was 45 days from Tampa to Cape Town, and then 45 days from Cape Town straight back here to Cape Cod last fall. And they live on the ship, it's their home. So they're basically at sea all the time. And yeah, you gotta remember these sharks, their thumbs are stuff that the brain size of your thumb is feed, flee, or reproduce. It's not like they're like, yo, Billy just got whacked by an orca. And then one of the problems and challenges with the white shark is that the anthropomorphization of it. I We've been tagging sharks for over 50 years and trying to place them in the dorsal fin. That area is chosen for a lot of different reasons. It doesn't have a lot of nervous tissue, and it doesn't have a lot of blood in it. And that's good. It's kind of like your earlobe or the tip of your nose, all right? So we think, at least my analogy is when you go ahead and tag an animal in its dorsal fin and they react, it's largely similar to somebody, say, running up to you and piercing your ear. It didn't hurt all that much, but it really frightens the heck out of you. So you're going to twitch a little bit. So we don't believe, based on what we know about that part of the body, that it's causing any discomfort to the animal whatsoever. That's why we choose those parts.
How is all the research you guys are doing on the white shark, how is that stopping the Japanese from, I guess it's the Japanese, from finning the other sharks?
Well, I mean, a lot of it, he asked, how is it impacting the finning industry, our work? Well, number one, we, for the first time, have the data where, we know we can go protect a nursery. So then if we protect that nursery, that the nursery's not going to get wiped out. When it comes to finning, a big part of the inclusion about having everyone involved is building the scale of it and leveraging the global brand to create awareness. So I think a lot more people know about shark finning because of our work. And then, of course, we really choose to collaborate with all these other groups that are really driving the push on finning, to make sure it's eliminated. The data we have is that it's all really moving in the right direction. Huge 30 to 40% drop last year, again indicating another 30% drop this year. So then you got to say, you got to test the data. Is that good data? Is that real data? Or is that just that they found a more clever way to move it around? Or are sharks harder to get because we're running out of them? So what's the data mean? But no, I think certainly environments like this, the tracker, the educational curriculum, the 400 million people a year who see the news stories like that, they're like, what, shark finning? Has an impact on awareness, because people generally speaking are centrist. People generally speaking, want to have the kids have a robust opportunity in the ocean, so we try to leverage our scale to do that, and then leverage our new data to affect new policy to functionally protect really vulnerable areas. I call a very smart guy who makes tags called Wildlife Computers, Arco tags. There's a company who makes those computers and they sell them to us, so we actually buy them. But what we do is we tell them how they work good, how they work bad, because you know what the biggest room in the world is, right? So we're room for improvement. So we're always trying to improve the technology and improve the tag. So we work with the manufacturers on that. I'm working with the manufacturer right now. I'm taking the spot tag, so you can just slide it over the leading edge instead of just use one bolt, so it comes right off nice and easy there. Always trying to make less impact and learn more. Yeah, sure.
All the tags manufactured by one manufacturer in the United States or worldwide?
The Arco tags come from Canada, and Wildlife Computers is out in the Pacific Northwest, which we buy most of our stuff from. There's a few different manufacturers, yeah. When we bought the ship, that platform actually picks boats up and puts them on the deck. So the gentleman I bought the ship from, who really made this possible, because he knew we were trying to do good, and he was very wealthy. And he sold me the ship. He's like, man, what can you afford? I can try to make this number. He had that. It picked up his 50-foot game boat, his sport fisher, and put it on deck. And then he carried his 30-foot center console and his 30-foot tender, and he roamed around and fished the most remote corners of the world and used the ship like a mobile marina. And so what we did is we just adapted that over to try to capture these large creatures for scientists. It was already there.
How many seals will a shark eat in, say, in a week's time?
I don't know what you almost scared the heck out of me. I mean, it just went running out of here a second ago, like, whoa. Nobody really knows that. I think when they get the opportunity, I think what is interesting, last year we were in front of a seal colony and a white shark came in and hit a seal, and we're like, oh, interesting, we're going to watch this for a while. It's probably 100 pounds. A seal just came back to me all in one bite. Just gone. So I think they eat them, Sea Cortez, yeah, they've stopped the commercial longline gill net fishing during the birthing season of the white sharks in that April, May, June time frame. So we're making progress there, you know, but those families need to survive. They weren't doing anything illegal. I'm a real centrist. You know, we have to find what people want to eat seafood. We have to find a way to deliver it sustainably while we make sure there's a robust opportunity for our kids to enjoy an ocean full of fish. So it's complicated down there, but we do have a nice big window now for the baby white sharks, and it needs to be expanded, and we need to figure out how to do that and have those people maintain their jobs, and maybe find a job that's a little bit more sustainable activity rather than an unsustainable one, and evolve it in the right direction. It's much easier here in America than abroad. That's why we need a global brand. The show's on in Mexico in Spanish. They know who we are now. Only one time. One time, what's the name of that shark? Was that Kimmel? Yeah. We were in the Sea Cortez when we first started this journey, and we tagged this big, beautiful female Kimmel, who we've now tracked through 2 full reproductive cycles. So one of the mysteries at these islands was the white and the Cape. We don't know for sure it's the Cape yet, but at Guadalupe, the males came every year, the females every other year. Why? Why? Well, it takes the females 18 months to have their babies, so they can only show at the breeding site every other year. So no one had ever tracked a mature female white shark like Kimmel through a full 2-year cycle to identify the nursery, and we've now tracked Kimmel through 2 of those, 4 full years. And interesting, they're going back to the same spots to drop off their pups as the previous time. Like, wow, that's heavy. Like a salmon. And Kimmel, after we tagged her, a year later we came back to Guadalupe, and when the guys were pulling in on the ship to the anchorage, they pull in and look, well, there's a fish penny right there with the tag on it. We actually got the imagery of it. It's Kimmel. 4,000 pound plus female. He's now shown us clearly identified where and when the breeding is occurring and where and when they're giving birth. It's only happened one time in 100 sharks, 65 great whites. We don't know where they are, but we are going to find them. Mary Lee hopefully will show us where they are next spring, at least in the Atlantic puzzle. In the Pacific, we know Southern California is a white shark nursery. Baja, the northern parts of Baja, on the inside and the outside, Sea Cortez and the Pacific side are both nurseries. Soon the South African sharks will lead us to their nursery, and this particular part of the world is just 6 months behind that. If Mary Lee's tag keeps working, she will show us next spring. 18 months from this past September, if Cape Cod is the breeding site. Gotta get all these little things to come together, right? Sure. We haven't had that happen. No, we don't know. We don't know. We don't know. No. I mean, maybe one day we'll all watch it together. Yeah. We see them regularly just traveling about 1,000 miles a month. They're basically just cruising around. When you look at Mary Lee's track, you can pull up Mary Lee's track, you know, when she's up moving, ping, 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 she's pinging in all the time, about 80 to 100 miles a day. And then when they find an area they like and they're not really traveling, we oftentimes see them, you know, not ping in for weeks. It's like they're foraging down below, they found a happy place. And then when they start moving again, you'll see they pop up almost in the same place you haven't heard from them in weeks. And then ping, 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 you know, when they're traveling. Really pinging while they're migrating, it appears, far more than when they find a spot they like to live in. Right there, yeah.
Why are you on the Cape? Like, is there any more sharks or different types of sharks here?
Well, we're on the Cape here because over the last half dozen years or so, you all started to see more and more white sharks. It started to impact the public's capacity to use the beaches. Dr. Scomo and Heather started to learn more and more, and the access to the white sharks has become more and more predictable here. Is that because of the gray seals? We're trying to figure that out. But we now, for the first time, we can say, wow, if we're going to go give $1 million gift to the community, you want to go do that in a situation where you have an opportunity to succeed. And the predictability of your white sharks has gotten to the point where now, I always looked at Caterpillar and I'm like, we should go help the people in Massachusetts. And that's where I want to spend the money. And they're always like, yes, go. Whatever you think. But at the same time, I have an obligation to only put us in a situation where we're moving an asset like this around the world and spending this kind of money where we will succeed. And if we finally got into a situation where we have a legitimate shot at that, because there's been so many more white sharks seen here of a predictable nature. So what we're going to do is we're going to catch some of these sharks, we're going to get these tags out, and then poof, they're going to go around, and then they're going to show us all the other places where they live, and maybe some other places where we can predictably access them as well. But we have to just let them show us the way. Last question.
Have you noticed in South Africa, with your research, the perception of the great white shark change amongst the population? Like you have here, since it's been a taboo word in this part of the Cape to even mention great white shark until you tagged the 2 last year, and everybody's on board now, and it's great to see it.
Man, that makes my skin tingle. You talk to people like Dr. Greg Scoble, Dr. Bob Huter, sometimes they say, the fact that you're changing the tone around the discussion of the white shark from one of the theme music of Jaws or fear to one of curiosity could be more important than all the stuff we're learning. Because if you get the world to look at the shark and have them understand they are the lion of the ocean, they are the, oh my gosh, we've got to look after our sharks. Well, then you get the scale and you can leverage that for the political will to do it. But yeah, I think it's because we've been inclusive. It's because everyone's able to solve the puzzle with the PhD. They're in the game, and now they're looking at the tracker and they're going like, oh, why is Mary Lee in the southeast? Oh, why is Mary Lee in, how does she go in the winter? Rather than the fear of the unknown. Such a massive void of information, people start to be like the fear of the unknown. So now what we're doing is we're replacing that fear with facts and data, and it's shifting the tone of the conversation from one of fear to one of fascination, curiosity. Yeah, I think it's a function of being inclusive and allowing the world to be a part of solving the puzzle. Thank you all very much for having us. It's a privilege to be here.
Before everyone heads out, I just wanted to plug the opportunity drawing that we are doing. So hopefully you've all bought your tickets. I can speak from first-hand experience of being on the boat with this absolutely amazing crew. Hopefully you saw Chris's passion come through, but everybody that's sitting up here is incredibly passionate and dedicated. This is the second talk that they're doing today, so having the opportunity to be on the boat and just get to hang out with everyone, hopefully see white sharks, as they have done every day. So just want to truly thank Chris and everybody here for being here, giving the presentation, working with our organization.